This happened to me just a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, I haven't had a good night's sleep since. I don't live in the middle of nowhere, but my neighborhood is one of those quiet places backed up against a lot of dense forest. Our property line ends where the tree line begins. And if you walk about a quarter of a mile through those trees, you hit an old service road. On the other side of that road is this massive, fenced-off electrical substation. It's been there forever, covered in high voltage and keep-out signs. The weird thing is, it looks completely abandoned. Vines are growing over the transformers, and I've never seen a single utility truck go back there. I've tried finding records of it online, just out of curiosity, but it's like it doesn't exist on any official town map. My brother and I used to joke that it was a cover for something else, but we never took it seriously. I'm training for a marathon right now, so I run a lot. That service road is perfect for sprints because it's flat, paved, and totally empty. It's a 3-mile loop from my back door, past the substation, and back. It's way better than running on the main streets, where people text and drive constantly. Since the days are getting shorter, I've been squeezing in my runs right before dusk. The day this all started, I was finishing my loop near that substation when I got this prickly feeling on the back of my neck. I heard a branch snap loudly. Not like a squirrel, but like a heavy boot stepping on dry wood. I stopped and looked around, but the woods were dead silent. I brushed it off as a deer and jogged home. Fast forward to that night. It was one of those humid summer nights where the air feels heavy. I left my bedroom window, cracked open a few inches to get a cross breeze. Around 2:00 a.m., the sky just opened up. A massive thunderstorm rolled in, shaking the whole house. I was lying in bed, half awake, listening to the rain hammer against the roof. That's when I heard it. It was faint at first, barely audible over the thunder. A sound coming from the backyard, right below my window. It wasn't crying, though it was humming. Someone was humming a slow, melodic tune, like a lullaby, but the pitch was wrong. It sounded distorted. I sat up, holding my breath, hoping it was just the wind howling through the screen. But then, a voice, unmistakably male but incredibly raspy, spoke through the rain. It was loud enough to be heard over the storm. He said, "The door is locked. Open the window." My blood turned to ice. I didn't freeze, though. Adrenaline kicked in hard. I grabbed the baseball bat I keep under my bed and sprinted downstairs to the back door to make sure the deadbolt was engaged. It was. Then, I ran to the living room window, which has a view of the backyard. I peered through the blinds, my heart hammering against my ribs. A flash of lightning lit up the yard, and I saw him. Standing directly under my bedroom window was a figure. He was tall, wearing loose, dark clothing that was plastered to his skin by the rain. He was facing the wall, his forehead pressed against the siding of my house. I must have made a noise, or maybe he just sensed me, because he suddenly snapped his head toward the living room window where I was standing. Then, things went from 0 to 100 instantly. He didn't just walk. He launched himself at the window I was looking out of. It was an explosion of movement. I stumbled back, raising the bat, ready for the glass to shatter. But he stopped, inches from the glass. He just stopped dead. He stared at me with eyes that looked way too wide, unblinking. Then, without trying to break in, he turned and bolted toward the tree line. And I mean, the speed he moved at didn't look humanly possible, especially on wet grass. He disappeared into the dark woods in seconds. I woke my parents up immediately. My dad grabbed his gun and we searched the perimeter, but the rain had washed away any tracks. We called the police, but with the storm, it took them 40 minutes to arrive. They took a report, looked around with flashlights, and basically told us it was probably a junkie looking for shelter from the rain. We locked everything down, but I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I took a few days off from running. I was too shaken up. But eventually, logic took over. I convinced myself it was a one-time thing, just some random crazy person passing through. About a week later, I decided to go for a run to clear my head. It was broad daylight, so it felt safe. I took my usual route toward the service road. As I approached that old electrical substation, I slowed down to tie my shoe. That's when I saw a movement inside the fence. I froze. Inside the high chain link fence topped with razor wire, standing near one of the rusted transformers, was the same man. I knew it was him immediately. Same dark, loose clothes. He was standing perfectly still, facing away from me. I was about 50 yards away on the road. I started backing away slowly, trying not to make a sound, but he turned around slowly, like he was on a pivot. When he saw me, his face changed. He didn't look angry. He smiled, but it was a wide, unnatural grin that showed too many teeth. He didn't run at me this time. Instead, he dropped to all fours and crawled toward the center of the substation, moving like a spider or a lizard. He squeezed himself into a small, dark opening at the base of a concrete platform, a hole that looked way too small for a grown man to fit into. He just slithered inside and vanished underground. I ran home faster than I have ever run in my life. I called the cops again, and this time, I insisted they check the substation. They actually sent a utility crew out there to open the gate. They searched the whole yard. They found the opening in the concrete, but they said it just led to a flooded cable trench that went nowhere. They found no sleeping bag, no food, no sign of anyone living there. I haven't seen him since, but the story doesn't end there. Now, at night, I hear tapping on the walls of my house, not on the windows, but on the siding, like someone is testing for a hollow spot. I know he's still out there. I know he's watching, and the worst part is, my dad thinks it's just raccoons, but I know the rhythm of that tapping. It matches the tune he was humming that night. I've stopped running completely. I don't go into the backyard anymore. I just want to move, but I can't explain to anyone why I am so terrified of a place that is supposed to be abandoned. I'll just come out and say it. I'm not winning any awards for Husband of the Year. My wife and I had been at each other's throats for days. I don't even remember what triggered it this time, but the yelling got loud enough that I knew I had to leave before I said something I couldn't take back. Instead of grabbing a motel room like a normal person, I decided to head out to a commercial property I bought last year as an investment. It's an old, defunct textile mill, about 30 minutes out of town. It's a brick monstrosity sitting on 5 acres of overgrown land. The plan was to gut it and sell the land, but for now, it's just a massive, empty shell with a small renovated office on the second floor where I keep some paperwork. I drove out there in silence, fuming. About halfway there, the sky turned black, and the rain started coming down in sheets. By the time I pulled up to the rusted gate, thunder was shaking the ground. I parked near the loading dock, grabbed my overnight bag, and let myself in. The place is creepy enough. During the day, shadowy corners, old machinery bolts still in the floor, but at night, in a storm, it feels like a tomb. The sound of the rain hitting the corrugated metal roof of the warehouse section was deafening, like 1,000 hammers hitting steel. I went up to the office, locked the door, and set up a sleeping bag on the old leather couch. I finally started to relax, listening to the storm, thinking I was completely alone. I drifted off for maybe 20 minutes before a sound jolted me awake. It wasn't thunder. It was the distinct, sharp sound of metal hitting concrete. It came from the main warehouse floor, right below me. My heart jumped into my throat. I lay there, straining to listen over the roar of the rain. I keep a heavy iron crowbar in the office for renovations, so I grabbed it and opened the office door. I stood at the top of the metal staircase, looking down into the pitch-black warehouse. "Who's there?" I yelled. No answer. Just the rain. I turned on my flashlight and went down, sweeping the beam across the floor. I checked every corner. Near the back wall, I found it. A heavy steel barrel, one of the few left behind, had been tipped over. It was rolling slightly back and forth. There was no draft in there strong enough to push a 50-pound drum. I assumed maybe a rat knocked something onto it, or maybe the vibrations from the thunder did it. I set the barrel upright, convinced myself I was just being paranoid, and went back upstairs. I wedged a chair under the doorknob of the office, just in case. I tried to close my eyes again, telling myself to stop acting like a child. But 10 minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't a crash. It was footsteps. Slow, deliberate, wet footsteps slapping against the concrete floor. Below. Slap, ... Pause. ... Pause. I grabbed the crowbar again, my hands shaking. This time, I didn't go down immediately. I listened. The footsteps stopped, right at the bottom of the stairs. I waited for the sound of boots on the metal steps, but it never came. Silence. After 5 agonizing minutes, I built up the nerve to check again. I burst out of the office, flashlight in one hand, crowbar in the other, screaming at the top of my lungs. Get out. I'm armed. Get the hell out. My voice echoed through the empty space. I ran down the stairs, adrenaline pumping, flipping on every breaker switch I could find until the work lights buzzed to life. The warehouse was empty. The doors were all barred from the inside. The windows were too high to reach. There was absolutely no one there. But standing in the center of that bright, empty room, my anger suddenly vanished, replaced by a physical sensation of dread I can't explain. It wasn't just fear, it was a biological warning. The air felt suddenly freezing cold, despite it being mid-July. I felt eyes on me, not from the corners, but from everywhere. Every instinct in my brain screamed one word. Run. I didn't grab my bag. I didn't turn off the lights. I ran straight for the side exit, shoved the crash bar, and sprinted to my car in the pouring rain. I tore out of that parking lot doing 50 on a gravel road. I drove home, white-knuckled, constantly checking my rearview mirror. I haven't been back to the mill since. I hired a contractor to go out there and retrieve my stuff. I told him I was too busy to do it myself. He called me later that day and asked if I had moved anything before I left. Primera? Sa ISD. No. He told me that when he got there, that heavy steel barrel I had set upright was sitting in the middle of the upstairs office, right next to the couch where I had been sleeping. My name is Chris. I live in a part of the state where the highways are mostly 2-lane roads cutting through miles of endless wheat fields. This happened about 3 Fridays ago. My best friend, Dave, and I had gone to a bonfire party way out in the sticks. I was the designated driver, so I was completely sober. But Dave was gone. He was loud, stumbling, and annoying. We left around 1 a.m. to make the 40-minute drive back to civilization. The weather turned on us halfway home. It started as a light drizzle but quickly turned into a violent storm. Visibility was terrible. I was hunched over the steering wheel, doing maybe 30 miles an hour, while Dave was in the passenger seat complaining about how sick he felt. He kept begging me to pull over so he could throw up. I told him to hold it, that we were in the middle of nowhere, but he started gagging. I didn't want him ruining my upholstery, so I pulled onto the shoulder of this desolate stretch of road. There were no streetlights. Just the headlights, cutting through the rain and tall wheat stalks swaying violently in the wind on both sides. Dave stumbled out of the car and disappeared into the darkness behind the vehicle to do his business. I sat there with the wipers slapping back and forth, checking my phone. A minute passed. Then 2. I was getting impatient. I cracked my window to yell at him to hurry up, but before I could speak, the back passenger door flew open. Dave practically dove into the back seat, slammed the door, and screamed, "Drive. Just drive." He wasn't drunk anymore. He was pale, shivering, and his eyes were wide with terror. I didn't ask questions. I floored it. The tires spun on the wet gravel before catching the asphalt, and we shot forward. As we sped away, Dave told me what happened. He said he was finishing up when he looked into the field. About 20 feet away, standing perfectly still in the tall wheat, was a person. Not a farmer. Someone wearing a burlap sack over their head, just watching him. Dave said the worst part wasn't the mask. It was that, when the lightning flashed, he saw the figure start to sprint toward the car on all fours. I told him he was hallucinating, just seeing shadows in the storm. But before he could argue, the steering wheel jerked violently to the left. The car started vibrating, and I heard the flap, flap, flap of a blown tire. My stomach dropped. We were maybe a mile from where we had stopped. I tried to keep driving on the rim, desperate to get to a town, but the car was dragging too hard. I had to pull over again. I grabbed a flashlight and told Dave to lock the doors and call 911 if he saw anything. I got out into the pouring rain and ran to the back tire. What I saw made me sick. It wasn't a natural blowout. Sticking out of the sidewall of my tire was a jagged piece of metal, like a homemade spike strip. It had been placed on the road intentionally. Someone had set a trap. I knew I couldn't change the tire. It would take too long, and I was exposed. I was about to jump back in the car when I heard it, a sound coming from the drainage ditch on the other side of the road. It was a high-pitched, giggling sound, like a child laughing. It was loud, piercing, and completely wrong for the situation. Then, the laughter stopped abruptly and was replaced by a deep, guttural voice mimicking my own name. Chris ... Help me, Chris. It sounded like a recording of my voice being played back on a distorted speaker. Panic took over. I didn't care about the rim. I jumped back into the driver's seat and locked the doors. Dave was screaming, asking what was out there. I threw the car into drive and mashed the gas pedal. We ground metal against asphalt for 5 miles, destroying the wheel, until we finally saw the lights of a gas station. We pulled in, shaken, and waited for the police. When the cops went back to check the scene later that night, they found the spike that had destroyed my tire. But they found something else too. In the ditch where I heard the voice, they found a small, battery-operated tape recorder taped to a stake in the ground. It had been recording our conversation from the first time we stopped. The voice I heard wasn't a ghost. It was someone playing back my own voice yelling at Dave, pitching it down to sound like a monster. Someone had been right next to us the whole time, waiting. And the only reason we are UN missing persons right now is because I decided to destroy my car rather than get out and check that ditch. I don't drive on back roads at night anymore. Not for anything.